reminded when the president was speaking of a conversation that I had yesterday with one of the Democratic senators who was questioning me during a hearing, and she was ridiculing President Trump for his math, and she was saying, it's mathematically impossible to have a drug drop by 600% cost, which he had claimed. And I said, well, if the drug was $100 and it raised the price to $600, that would be a 600% rise. Well, if it drops from 600 to 100, that's a 600% savings. And the president used that mathematical device to illustrate the magnitude of the theft that has been happening against our country.
That was Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about one of the administration's main focuses, which is lowering prescription drug prices. And as an economist who studies the pharmaceutical industry, that is one of my main focuses as well. And the piece de resistance of this program to lower prescription drug prices is centered around TrumpRX, which was rolled out in February. And we actually have updated new numbers to see whether or not this program, right, which gave out coupons to lower brand name prescription drug prices, how many drugs it actually covered, and whether or not it led to substantial savings, even if it's not 500 or 600%, even though that's mathematically impossible, but I digress. So on TrumpRX, there are currently 92 brand name medications from 15 of the 17 companies that this current administration announced that they would be making deals with over the last year, as well as allowing these companies and their brand new drugs to go through expedited review, which would allow these companies to save hundreds of millions of dollars on their R&D costs. Now, those 92 drugs are an increase from the initial 43 drugs that were announced on TrumpRX when it was launched back in February, but it's still less than 12% of the over 800 drugs that are produced by these 17 pharmaceutical manufacturers. If we want to go into specifics, Pfizer, which is the pharmaceutical company has the most amount of drugs on TrumpRX, has about 30 drugs listed. However, their portfolio currently contains about 178 drugs, so it only represents a little under 20%. In addition, the drugs that are currently being listed on TrumpRX from Pfizer are not the blockbuster drugs, right? They're not the drugs that are making the company the most amount of money. Think of things like Eliquis and Paxlovid and Ibrance, these drugs that are making these companies hundreds of millions of dollars. Those are nowhere to be found for a discount. Now, some of the drugs they are listing, which we've talked about before, are drugs that also already have generics available. So for example, Xeljanz, which is a drug that treats for inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, is currently listed for about $1,500 on TrumpRX. But you can go to Cost Plus Drugs and get a generic version, right, of Xeljanz for about $30 a bottle. So where exactly is the discount for consumers unless you are exclusively purchasing the brand name? And yes, currently TrumpRX does have deals listed on generics on things like Cost Plus Drugs and Amazon Pharmacy. However, what's really jarring is that they're listed in two different tabs. So unless you're going to the brand name tab and then going to the generic tab, right, because you know there's a generic, it's very difficult for patients to see if there's an affordable generic available. And in addition, I mentioned only 15 of the 17 companies, right, have drugs available. The two companies that don't yet have drugs available on TrumpRX, which is Gilead and Regeneron, say that they will have one each drug from their portfolio on TrumpRX. But the date is nowhere to be determined according to those companies. So has TrumpRX offered 500 to 600% discounts on a wide variety of drugs? No, that's simply not true. They've offered modest discounts between 20 and 50% on a small number of drugs, with the caveat that a lot of these pharmaceutical companies are getting significant discounts on research and development, and that the companies are not having their most expensive drugs gone forward. And also, as consumers, we have to keep in mind that a lot of people who have insurance, right, who have health insurance, they might actually get their drugs less on their insurance versus going through TrumpRX and getting these coupons. But again, that all depends on how your insurance is structured. Again, the overall impact seems very small considering how many drugs and what types of drugs these pharmaceutical companies are offering discounts to. For now, that's all I got. As always, if you have any questions, let me know.